Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old to history to anecdotes to really wherever our whims take us. Howard the Duck. Oh yes, you heard that right. All aboard for Whim City. Howard the Duck, before both Marvel and Lucasfilm were purchased by Disney, found himself in a silent yet serious cease and desist over intellectual copyright infringement. This was because of similarities between Howard the Duck and Donald Duck, but it went a little bit deeper than that. And even though it was settled out of court, it is a fascinating tale. And it produced one of the most passive-aggressive comic book clapbacks of all time. You know that you want to hear about it. But before we get started, I'm Sasha, and if you're enjoying this content, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Join us on this comic book journey. Howard the Duck debuted in Adventure into Fear number 19 in 1973, and was created by Steve Gerber and Val Mayerick. Despite being killed off, he would be brought back by fan demand, where he got to feature in backup issues in giant-sized Man-Thing 4 and 5, before he would get his own self-titled comic book in 1976. Howard the Duck. It was in 1977 that Marvel was contacted by Disney. This was about how they felt that their character, Howard the Duck, was infringing upon Donald Duck, that there had been some kind of borrowing going on. It is believed that this came about not only because of the physical resemblance between the two characters, but because of how Howard the Duck was presented. If you were confusing Donald with Howard, you were about to get a very different experience. And Disney didn't want this confusion to cut into their foreign markets overseas, where Disney comics do quite well. For Disney does produce comics, although it often outsources them to other people to have them produce them. Maximum profit, minimum effort. Foreign marketers were contacting Disney saying that they were afraid there was going to be confusion from casuals who were just walking by and would see something with the word "the Duck," see Howard, and then think, oh, I've got the right thing, it's fine. Kind of like how Asylum films hope they're going to make their money. It's not Twister, it's Cyclone. Close enough. Now, Disney does not want its family-friendly brand associated with anything even remotely problematic. They never have. And they will sue you into oblivion over it when they can afford it, which is normally most of the time. They didn't want to have to deal with all of the extra that was Howard the Duck, his political stance, his swearing, his smoking, his drinking, his human girlfriend. However, Disney also doesn't want to appear like a big corporation coming down on somebody smaller than them, because it clashes with their brand image, which is family friendly. When you're with them, your family. Oh wait, sorry, that's Fast and the Furious, but also Disney. And so the contact reaching out to Marvel was quiet, and it doesn't appear that Marvel put up much of a fuss at all. In fact, it was Disney who sent over a very specific design sheet of changes that they were insisting upon for Howard. This was to make him more distinct. We had to have differences. They couldn't both be white mallards wearing blue. And Marvel didn't contest this, which is a point of bitterness for the Duck's creator. But Gerber has a strong attachment to Howard in general. He's got a lot riding on this duck. He feels that Howard is an expression of existentialism. That is not how the creator of the movie felt. They have very contrasting opinions on that, and that's very interesting to see. They also butted heads. Gerber himself would also get into a lawsuit with Marvel, which he ultimately lost in 1982. The lawsuit was about who owned Howard the Duck, and who had the rights to franchise it off and have him appear in movies and on lunchboxes and all of the like. However, he ultimately would acquiesce that the work that he did for Marvel in that time period was work for hire, meaning that anything he created during that period belonged to them. Always read your contract, always own your own stuff, always make sure of that, because it will come back and bite you. There are all kinds of little tiny loopholes the companies have. The house always wins, unless you're very, very careful with your contract. So it was that Howard the Duck was owned by then parent company Cadence Industries, and they could do with him as they wished, which meant making a questionable movie which is best enjoyed with friends and perhaps with some fermented beverages. On the topic of Howard's design and the changes made to it, Gerber had this to say: Marvel never even attempted to negotiate the matter, never even submitted any alternate designs for Disney's consideration. The thought process behind this is assumed to be the fact that Howard was a minor character. And it helped that, as mentioned, Howard wasn't liked by all the editorial staff, hence why he had been killed off in the first place. He had a niche fan base in a book that was struggling to meet deadlines. It was hardly worth getting into it with a behemoth like Disney, who had the time and resources to spend and extract millions in a bid to protect their property, brand image, or whatever they felt was being infringed upon / threatened. And Howard was one of the smaller, less scandalous things that they were taking on. For example, they were still trying to deal with all of those Disneyland memorial orgies that were floating around in the Realist and that had been made into posters and all kinds of things. That was the satirical, sexual, very pointed work that Wally Wood had made that we've discussed in the Power Girl Bosom video. Marvel seemed willing to cooperate, so Disney didn't feel the need to go evil South Park Mickey on them. Huh? Break his kneecaps, boys. But what did Disney want changed? Well, they demanded a fair few changes. They wanted Howard's head to be distinctly oval, not round, for him to have smaller eyes, take him out of line with Disney characters who have big eyes, a short upturned bill, and most terrifying to me at least, toes rather than flippers. They wanted him to have a texture that made him look feathered. He was to be an off-white color, now more of a yellow than a pure white like Donald. Also, his color scheme was to change. They wanted it brown eyes specifically, which the movie ignored. Everybody's like, whatever. But I mean, in the movie, he clearly does not look like Donald. He looks like a nightmare. But the part that gets the most play and did seem to make him the most distinct, which was the easiest to incorporate basically without having to make all these little tweaks, was pants. If anybody's gonna break decency laws, it's gonna be Donald. So as you can see, that's actually a fair amount to change. All little things, but it's the small things that add up. Now, they had time to implement these changes, but they often went about it half-heartedly, or some people not at all. Gerber, however, already pretty outspoken about big corporations, was annoyed at being meddled with by one, and would express the sentiment in stories. Hardly surprising from a man who, upon failing to meet a deadline, turned an entire issue 16, into a satire of him struggling to write it. However, the big clapback would not come from him, but instead from writer Bill Mantlo. He was one of the writers who had been placed onto the Howard the Duck series after issue 27, when Gerber had been kicked off. This was because of a failure to meet deadlines. Mantlo was also the main writer when the series attempted relaunch in 1979, this time with a bi-monthly magazine with a scaled-down budget. This one was black and white. And it was here in issue 2 that we would get the canonical story as to why Howard the Duck wears pants. And it's actually a pretty clever, salty satire. The story was called Animal Indecency, and it had art by Gene Colan and Klaus Janson. See Howard battle the forces of evil through the power of massive mediocrity. Now there's a tagline I can get behind. Even though his main one is trapped in a world he never made, he certainly does not look very Donaldish on this cover. A bit more Daffy-ish, but I guess Warner Brothers has bigger problems. Hello, my name is Wally Sidney. You don't know me, but I've been watching out for your welfare nonetheless. Maybe you'll get the picture if I tell you about a situation we have here in Cleveland faced just recently, and describe how a concerned citizenry understood its responsibilities and rallied to deal with the serious, often underestimated problem of animal indecency. So Howard and his girlfriend Beverly have come across some protesters outside a pet store in Cleveland, demanding that the animals cover up, and they get even more irate when they see that Howard is not wearing pants. Undraped, scandalous, it talks. From inside his clothing store, Wally Sidney observes,
I hope you jokers are proud of yourselves, driving small businesses out of Cleveland.
Cleveland doesn't need indecency, Mallard.
I love that until recently Mallard was an insult that you could levy against Tim Drake because he was calling himself Drake. I'm glad those days are over and we are free. Only ducks need to be calling themselves ducks. Isn't that right, Howard? The protesters get to Howard, I mean emotionally, and so he ends up attacking them. And pantless too, which just adds to the scandal.
Hold on, Ducky, I'm coming. Slut, there's no need to brag about it.
Howard the Duck is not PC, and I think over time he's just gotten less PC. Yes, that was a sex joke, and a word that some would bleep, but not me, for I don't know. So the two have to hide in the mall, where while in a TV store, the TVs are set to everyone's favorite channel, Exposition News, and they see that even the mayor is getting in on the outrage over pet indecency. But he's nothing compared to the angry mob, so what he has to say, well, it's not going to reach them at all.
I beg you to give up this campaign, while urging upon them compassion, for poor dumb creatures know not what they do.
Ah yes, the condescending, backhanded insult support. My favorite. That's exactly what the pets need.
Not once did they realize their chase was cunningly planned to herd them directly to me.
So they are led to Sydneyland, conservative clothiers. Clothliness is next to godliness. So he hides them in his store and reveals that it was him who planted the seeds of animal indecency in their minds. He suggested that they needed to start wearing clothes. But why? Well, here we have some time to get some pointed shots in at Disney.
This is my latest creation, Mr. Director, sir. A rat. He wears clothes, and he'd be just the thing for merchandising or talking pictures. I call him Jaime.
A rat that wears clothes and talks, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Look at the cute visual gag of the rat drawing kicking him. Nice touch. So dejected and rejected, Sidney decides that he's going to sell clothes. He's already got designs, and at first it's going great. He is a huge hit. He even gets a fashion movie called Pantasy, which deserves 8 sequels for the puns you could make alone. Fantasy 2, shirts up. Fantasy 3, garters away. But he can't keep up with the changing trends, and he loses popularity and hence profits. He needed to create a new market for himself, and so he sought one in animals. It's his evil master plan, as he already has designs pre-made from when he had dreams of a little rat named Jaime. The mob is still out there and waiting, and Sidney tells Howard that if he gets him to dress in clothes, that will be the victory he needs. That he will walk out there and they'll see him and feel that they've won, and that will be the start of the end of naked pets. Howard doesn't want to, but he also doesn't want to be torn to shreds, and he decides that living is more important than not wearing pants.
Ah, Cluck, you win, but I'm warning ya. The whole world is gonna know that Wally Sidney made me do it.
It is one of the privileges of power not to be afraid of taking credit for one's dastardly deeds.
That's a good line. I'm really scared of Wally Sidney now. And so we get maximum tongue-in-cheek as Howard tries on the Fowl collection, which features Scrooge McDuck's outfit, Donald Duck's outfit, and Don't Think I Don't See Mickey's pants. He ends up settling on one which adds pants to the type of suit and tie combo he normally sported, and is able to leave the store unaccosted.
And so Sydneyland Clothiers became known as the official outfitters to one Howard the Duck.
Oh, to be so productively passive-aggressive.
This is quite the dig, but it's clever because while pointed, it's not so much so that it loses itself in it.
There are other commentaries being made here, like on hyperconservatism, mob mentality, on corporate maneuvering, digs against Disney himself, as well as his properties.
A name similar enough to get the point across, but also different enough to fall into that nebulous satire zone.
And maybe fly under some people's radar if they are more obtuse or uninformed about certain elements of pop culture. It happens. Not everybody gets everything. I miss things, you miss things, people miss things. We all have different reference points, so we're all gonna get and miss different things. It's not often you see annoyance so pointedly channeled. It's kind of impressive in a petty kind of way.
Whether you feel it's warranted / justified is gonna be a mileage may vary type of deal. Some may find it just childish and silly, or unnecessarily potentially provocative,
even though it didn't end up proving to be so. Oof. Howard would have to keep his pants, as creators would discover. It was discovered by Disney that Marvel wasn't exactly adhering to their redesigns as strictly as they would like. And so, behind closed doors, a written contract was made. This was something that not everybody at Marvel was aware of. Not Gerber, that's for sure. As he discovered it years later in 2002 when he was coming back to the character to do a mini-series. I have quotes for days, get excited. Gerber stated,
Disney never actually sued Marvel over Howard. There were threatening letters, but to my knowledge no suit was ever filed, and the matter never got anywhere near a court. When we began talking about the new series, we were all under the impression that Marvel's old management had simply agreed on a handshake basis with Disney that Howard wouldn't look like Donald. Just to be safe though, we checked with Marvel's legal department and discovered that a written agreement between the two companies pertaining to Howard's appearance did exist. The way that agreement is worded, Marvel isn't permitted to redesign Howard the Duck. The character has to look like the designs Disney provided. We really were on the verge of abandoning the whole project when a bizarre idea occurred to me. What if we changed Howard into another species entirely? If the character wasn't a duck, how could Disney complain?
oh yes, a bitterness so strong that it was better to have Howard not be his namesake animal than conform to the redesigns. Take that, corporate overlords.
So you had a Howard the Duck series where he was constantly mutating and barely a duck at all.
All of this is of course now moot because Marvel is owned by Disney, so when Howard the Duck does appear, he is definitely not going to be looking like Donald. And he will most certainly be wearing pants, and have brown eyes, and an oval head, and toes? No, I'd rather he wear shoes than have toes. Still, let it not be forgotten that Wally Sidney is the reason that Howard the Duck wears pants. So there's just some neat petty trivia for you. I want to know, do you think that Howard and Donald looked really similar? Do you think that Disney was right to request the changes that they did? What do you think of the in-canon response? Have you ever read Howard the Duck? Or are you like, who? Or have you only seen the movie and you're like, why? That movie's fun, don't at me. Do you like these random tidbit videos? That's enough questions, and please answer them all down below, or whatever you feel like doing. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to spend it discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.